When it comes to trying to achieve a more natural sound in American English pronunciation, there are some sounds that can be confused with each other. And today we're going to be taking a look at a couple of those, in addition to just seeing what else it takes to sound more natural when we speak in American English. Good morning, guys. Good evening. Good afternoon. Welcome to your American English Pronunciation Review Show, the Schwa Mill. We are here, though our schedule is changing, and as soon as I have greater updates on that, I'll try to let you know. But in general, we're here on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Fridays to make sure that you have a chance to get some feedback on your accent and things like that. We're going to be listening to two files that were sent to us on our Schwa Mill pronunciation group on Telegram, which is free. Although I always would like to remind you that, during the streams, we're picking two files, and people are sending me more files that we can cover in that time. So if you're trying to get feedback for yourself every single day based on the comments in the sorts of feedback that we look at, then you may want to check out our full pronunciation Telegram group at fluentamerican.com/Telegram. That being said, thanks to everyone who's been sending us files. Let's take a listen to our first one for today and see what kind of feedback we can give.
You force things to happen in your life.
Okay, I'll play that one more time.
You force things to happen in your life.
Okay, so from what I remember too from this file, I believe he was saying, thank you by the way for sending us, he was saying you don't need to force things to happen in your life. It doesn't sound like the first couple of words were put into the audio, or maybe the microphone didn't pick them up when they were being recorded. So let's just kind of focus on the part that we hear.
You force things to happen in your life.
So we can hear kind of need the force things to happen in your life. That's the part that I hear.
You force things to happen in your life.
Okay. And some of the things that are kind of standing out to me for this, first of all, it seems like our placement might be a little bit high. You can hear it on words like need, things, and life.
You force things to happen in your life.
Or even that whole like to happen in your, it feels like we're really high and it feels like we're blocking a lot of breath. Like to happen in your life, like to happen in your, versus like to happen, to happen.
You force things to happen in your life.
To happen in your, one of the ways that we can really try to open up sounds, if you feel like anything you're pronouncing is a little bit closed off, is to engage more breath. And how do we engage more breath? Well, one of the ways you can do that is by putting more attention onto your vowel sounds. Less attention onto the consonants, more attention onto the vowels. And by giving more space to the vowels, that automatically is going to open up the breath. So for instance, I'm looking at that last thought group. Maybe we could give more space to the vowel sounds that are around there.
You force things to happen in your life.
Because we get a little bit caught, like happening your versus like happier. So what are our vowel sounds in that part? So you have in happen, you have like an ah sound like in cat. You can use like a short I sound like in sit. It's like ah. Then you have the word in, so another short I sounds like it's like ah. Then you have an sound, and then you have an I sound, I. It's like ah, I. Can we just say that maybe like descending like and then we can add the syllables back in, right? It's like happen in your life. Happen in your life. Another thing that may help with adding more breath to this as well is moving away from the firmness.
You force things to happen in your life.
Like happen in your life versus happen in your life. You can go a little softer. Again, more of that breath. It's like happen in your life, happen in your life, happen in your life, happen in your life. Just kind of like practicing alternating between going firm and soft, just to experiment and see what those elements of contrast can feel like. Going back to the beginning with the word need.
You force things to happen in your life.
Okay, need versus like need. If you find that your placement is high on your word need, a couple of things. It could be because of that letter N sound. So by taking the tip of your tongue and pressing against the bottom of your mouth, that may help. So doing like a n, instead of a n, more of a n. Okay. Same thing with that E sound. So say E versus like an E. E. That's the difference between a high and a low placement on that. You want to be careful with both those sounds because most likely in your first language you have an E sound and you have an N sound, but we want to treat them a little bit differently when we speak in English. Okay. Um, the very last thing I'll say about this file.
You force things to happen in your life.
Need force things to happen in your life. Like the rhythm here also is feeling a little bit. Something sounds a little bit off to me, especially with regards to that second thought group with the force things. Like that honestly could have been a single thought group, right? Like you don't need the force things. You don't need the force things. Versus you don't need the force things. Like what it's hard because I don't have enough context. But like, why are we like stressing things? Why are we separating that thought group? You know, what's kind of the motivation behind it? I think experimenting with longer thought groups also may help a bit. It's like you don't need the force things. You don't need the force things versus you don't need the force things. So that's just a final commentary. Play around with the thought groups that you use in your speech. If you use a lot of short ones, maybe experiment with adding in some long ones every now and then. Okay. But thank you so much for sending in that file. In the interest of time, we're going to move us on to our second file for today.
Generate, drive, try.
I'll play it one time.
Generate, drive, try.
Okay, so here we're getting some dr sounds, right? In addition to j sounds. So the first word I believe was the word generate.
Generate,
I believe that little T came in at the end. What I will say is it sounds a little similar to January, so I want to be careful, right? Generate versus January. It's like N and those might be some minimal pairs that are worth exploring just to make sure that our listeners can understand the difference between them when we say them. So again, it's like an N versus an An, Jen versus Jan, Ben versus Ban, Lend versus Land, things like that. Might be worth practicing a bit. But let's again look at that j sound.
generate, drive.
Okay. So that j sound in general, when we need to make it, like in just or gen and things like that, what you can do is you can have the tip of your tongue down against the bottom front teeth of your mouth. In that mid front of your tongue, kind of like right around that line that I drew on my tongue, you can press that against the top of your mouth, your alveolar ridge, right around where your top tooth meets your gum. You can press around there. So it sounds like j, j, j. Now, what I will say is that you don't want to make this sound too firm because we are much more interested in vowels than on the consonant sounds. Like when you say Jen, that N sound is much more important. That N, Jen, N, Jen, N, Jen. Because we don't want this to turn to Jen. That's a very heavy j sound, and we just don't need to be that firm. Which brings us to what happens when we have a D and an R
Generate,
together.
drive, try.
And those last two words, I believe, were drive and dry. And I like those. Thought those sound pretty good. So when you have an D and an R together, what's going to happen is it's going to make like that j sound we just described, but then add a slight R sound after it. It's like dra, dra. So again, when you see a D and an R together, it makes a dra sound, like in dry or drive. The tongue position is pretty much identical for the front of the tongue to what we just described. So again, tip of your tongue down, that mid front of your tongue up against your alveolar ridge. Just add in that slight R sound, so you may need to raise the back of your tongue a little bit. It's like dr, dr. And when you make that R sound again, trying to keep the breath flowing, keep it relatively open, so it's not as much as it's dr, drive, dr, drive, or try, or words like that.
Generate, drive, try.
The last thing I'll say is that this first word for generate,
Generate,
our placement's really high. Generate versus generate. It felt like the other two words, the placement got a little bit lower on, which was nice. But this first one feels a little bit high. So I would see if we could maybe engage the diaphragm a little bit more, lower the placement a little bit. I think that'll give you a sound that you like. All right. Thank you once more to everyone who sent us pronunciation files. That's very kind of you to entrust me with your pronunciation guidance. And also thanks you guys for watching. There's a lot of pronunciation resources out there, so the fact you spent a little bit of time out of your day with me is appreciated. We'll be back on Friday. Actually, I have some travel on Friday. I'm gonna try to be available on Friday. I'll put it like that. Maybe we'll try to do a quick stream. Um, if not, we'll try to get back to you guys soon. But hey, thank you as always for your time. I hope you guys have a good day, have a good night, and a good afternoon. Take care.